Greetings and welcome to Growth Hacking Secrets. I'm your host, Muhammad Siddique from Atlanta, Georgia, and the co-author of New Success Secrets available on Amazon. On this episode, we have a special guest, Brian Sexton. Brian is the host of the Intentional Encourager podcast. If you notice, let me read it again. The Intentional Encourager. There's a very few people who are intentionally trying to encourage all of us to uplift it to the next level. So if you want to have even a remote desire for yourself to positively encourage yourself, you want to join into this one, and also not only alone, bring your friends too. So please join me to give a warm welcome to our guest, Brian Sexton. Brian, welcome.
Siddique, what a great honor it is to be with you today. I hope you and your audience are well. By the way, I am coming to you from Barbersville, West Virginia, right outside of Huntington, where Marshall University is. And as I speak, Siddique, outside my window, there's about 3 inches of snow. So before I joined you, I am married to the love of my life for the last 24 and a half years. I made sure that her car was cleaned off and a walkway was done for her. And so right before we started recording, she called my cell phone and said, "Oh, thank you. But did you, she asked me, she said, you didn't do my whole car, did you?" And I said, "No, just your windshield. I've learned to listen to you after 24 and a half years. So I'm coming to you from snowy West Virginia. So good morning to you and your listeners. What an honor to be on the Growth Hacking Secrets podcast."
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. I like you're so precise to listening to your best half. Only do the thing what she asked for. Don't expand on it. Otherwise, you will be in trouble,
Siddique, we have a saying here in West Virginia: if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And so that I have learned that well. So, I'm not, as Forrest Gump said, I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. And so I've learned to figure out if you listen to your wife, it's probably going to be a lot better day for you. So
Understood. And Brian and everyone else, the same is true in Georgia too, and I second that. Okay.
Well, I think, Siddique, I think that's a universal language among us married guys. That the longer we're married, be intentional about listening to your wife, guys. I will tell you that. And again, happy wife, happy life. So, but
Yeah.
Again, my distinct thrill to be with you today on the Growth Hacking Secrets podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Let me start with this. Where were you? What happened? Who you were surrounded with that inspired you to get started with the Intentional Encourager podcast?
Siddique, I looked around LinkedIn last year. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And I looked around LinkedIn and people have been telling me, "Brian, you need to do a podcast." For 18 years, I've done live radio part-time and I've done public address announcing, and people said, "We need to do a podcast." And I said to them, "Okay, what should I do it about?" And so I looked around LinkedIn and I saw a lot of expertise, and there's nothing wrong with expertise, but there was a void of intentional encouragement. And I said to myself, I'm going to fill that void. And so I decided to start the Intentional Encourager podcast. And Siddique, it's about telling the stories of people that you see on LinkedIn. A lot of them are my friends and your friends. Mm-hmm. And I wanted them to have a vehicle to tell their story and to intentionally encourage people that might be going through a similar situation that those folks already faced, because you can't really always put it in a post and tell your story and do it succinctly. But in the podcast form that we have, we take 40 minutes to an hour and we really dive deep and tell a lot of powerful stories. And my life has been enriched by those stories as well as the audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I do this interview for the same reason. So we are going to kind of get the encouragement from you. So how to keep going on this one. So you learned a lot by listening and sharing to those stories from that. And let's try to get a common theme from that. And my questions are all designed what not to do and what to do, basically based on your experience of certain things. So Brian, what are the top 3 missteps to avoid when you want to host a podcast or be a host on a radio show, or because that's your expertise?
Well, for me, the 3 biggest things to avoid are, number one, not to be engaged in the conversation. So many times it's easy, and if I were to show you my full desk, the only thing that I have close by me is something to drink, because I want to keep my voice nice and lubricated and things like that. So I would say the first thing is make sure that you're hydrated when you do that, because again, you're going to be talking, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour or whatever, you want to make sure your voice is hydrated so it's consistent. So you give the listeners a good, consistent listening experience. The second misstep I would say to avoid is not to engage. So again, I don't have my cell phone with me or anything like that. And I'm always looking directly at the person that I'm talking to. So if you see me move this way, it's because, Siddique, if you and I were in the same room together, I would be making eye contact with you. I would be making and keeping eye contact with you. So the second thing I would say to avoid is avoid disengaging with your guests. You always want to be engaged. And the third thing that I would say is to avoid thinking that you don't have something to say or that your guest doesn't have something to say. The best conversations that I've had on the Intentional Encourager podcast, the real money note, as I call that, if you go to a concert to hear a performer, you go there to hear them sing a song or hit a particular note. And so sometimes the money note in a conversation can be in the last 5 minutes. It's the crescendo. So let it happen naturally, and avoid the misstep of forcing the crescendo, and let it happen naturally, because your guest will give you that crescendo at just the right moment. It's powerful.
Yeah, wonderful. This is good. So I know we got a good guest, Brian Sexton, the host of Intentional Encourager podcast. Based on your 3 missteps to avoid, that gives me the opportunity to ask a lot more questions now, because I know you are really sharing the real deep knowledge experience. I like especially the last one. We focused, keep listening to your guest, engage with them, because you have no idea what's going to come from
Do you
there.
mind if I share a quick little nugget around that? So here's where I learned this. Okay. And so I don't ever send guest questions beforehand, because I want people to be involved in a conversation, not listening to an interview.
Yeah.
And I learned this. I had the good fortune. I have a dear friend of mine. His name is Al Roberts, and his family had a television show called Duck Dynasty, very popular here in the United States. And Al's father is a speaker and an evangelist and minister and an author. His name is Phil Robertson. I got the chance to interview Phil. I had 13 questions prepared for an hour interview. I asked him 4, Siddique. And what that taught me was ask one question, and then when your guest responds, I'm thinking in my mind about what they're saying and thinking about something that I want to follow up with. And I'll jump in and interrupt my guest if they're in the middle of something, because I want to highlight something or I want to pull a little more conversation out of that. And so I really learned the power of an organic conversation to a podcast, and not making it so scripted. A lot of times we're too scripted in life. Sometimes the best things that happen organically. They happen naturally.
Yeah.
And so that was a vignette that I learned from doing that interview that's helped me as I transition to the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Wonderful. Intentional organic conversation. I love this word, organic conversation, as we are eating organic most of these days to stay, create your mind immunity level goes high, because you're listening very carefully, and that way you want to follow up on that one and highlight it. Because if we are not listening, we are not learning anything, So, Brian,
here's something else. Let me share this real quick too, and I'm seeing the comments as well too coming in. Here's a great tip for you to really build rapport with your guest as a podcaster. Always use their name. Use their name frequently, and I've done that with you, Siddique, and I've done that intentionally, because Dale Carnegie said the sweetest sound to a person's ear is the sound of their own name. If you want to really engage someone, use their name, because again, not only does it heighten their senses, but it strengthens and deepens that relationship that you're trying to build and you're trying to convey to your audience. And so I'm very intentional about multiple times in the podcast when I will ask a question or something like that, using that person's first name to further move that relational conversation forward.
Yeah, understood. So Brian, I use the same. We are the student of the same mindset. So Brian, I'm sure right now you're successful in podcasts, and people see it. Wow, it's a great tips, and I love it. That's what people are saying online. However, it was never like when we started. There are so many lessons and learned. We did it, and I want you to share one single most professional failure you had it. And what did you learn from that, and how did you recover from it?
The biggest obstacle, Sadiq, that I've overcome, is that what you asked?
Biggest failure in making it.
Biggest failure, yeah. When I started the podcast, Sadiq, the biggest failure that I had was I wasn't intentional about really pooling the expertise that I got from friends and really making a good decision. So the biggest failure that I did was I didn't invest in a good webcam. Right out of the chute, I didn't invest in a good webcam. The other thing was I didn't invest in a good microphone.
Yeah.
And so I just went and bought a compressor mic, and then I thought I needed a mixing board and things like that, when really all I needed was the mic that I have right now. And I didn't realize in June that webcams and toilet paper would become scarce in West Virginia. And so I found myself needing another webcam and having to wait because all the stores locally were out of webcams. So looking back, I would have probably beefed up my computer. I would have probably spent a little more on my computer. I would have gotten the right mic and the right webcam right out of the chute. And I would have probably done more research and done a couple of test podcast episodes before actually launching. So if you go back and look at my YouTube episodes, you really see an evolution from where I was to where I am now.
How do you feel when you watch your first 5 episodes go back? You laugh at yourself. You say, "Oh my God, that's me. I don't even want to see it."
No, the content's good. I knew that we had something good. I'm grateful when I go back and listen to the first 5 podcasts, because I don't think there's any way I could have imagined that we would be pushing our 100th episode coming up here in the next couple of months, that we would have 100 episodes. We'll do 100 episodes in a year, official episodes. And I've done bonus episodes. So that number really is close to 100 right now. I'm grateful. I really am, Siddiq. I look back and I say, wow, this has so far exceeded. And here's the thing I want to share. I'm going to give a piece of intentional encouragement. Don't get caught up in the numbers when you're committed to your purpose. Your numbers will grow as you stay committed and consistent to the purpose that you started out with. You may have to evolve and do some things differently, but when your purpose is resolute and you're consistent in that, the numbers will come. And so I don't worry about number of downloads. I know, people say, well, how big's your show? It's not as big as I'd like for it to be, but you know what? It's growing.
Yeah.
It's growing organically. It's growing intentionally. And my purpose has always been one. I'm not interested in thousands of downloads. I'm interested in that one person that says, Brian, I listened to your podcast and it really helped me. It encouraged me. It strengthened me because that guest talked about something I'm walking through. So I would tell folks, listen, your platform is going to grow as you remain consistent in your purpose. Don't get caught up in the numbers, because you want growth that's steady and manageable and consistent rather than going up like a rocket ship. Because what happens to rocket ships, Siddiq? Gravity says what goes up must eventually come down. And so just be consistent. Be consistent in the climb.
Yeah, wonderful. So if you have to do this all over again, you launch this one all over again, how would you do it?
I would probably get a sponsor and have a really nice studio and again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, Siddiq, I probably would have invested more heavily in the equipment up front. But I don't know that there's much that I would change. I like where we're headed. I like what we're doing. And again, I am blessed that I've had some rock star friends on LinkedIn and outside of LinkedIn. I'll share this with you. One of my heroes, and you could probably see in my background this way, is Zig Ziglar. Zig is a hero of mine. Zig says this: encouragement is the fuel that powers hope. Well, one of the greatest joys of my life is having his son, Tom Ziglar, be on my podcast twice. We did a regular episode and a bonus episode. And so my friendship with Tom Ziglar has been wonderful. That's a personal hero of mine. One of my regrets, I wish my dad were here to see this. My dad passed away 8 years ago. And so I would have liked to have sat down with a conversation and have my dad on the podcast. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Because he would have insulted me for 30 minutes and then we would have gotten into some things. But no, I wish I could have my dad on the podcast. But again, I don't think there's a lot I would change, Siddique. I really don't. I think we're going where we want to go, and I've been intentional about that.
Yeah. Okay. Great, Brian. So now this is the time to share where we ask the 3 success secrets you had across the platform, and plus from your guests. It doesn't have to be all your own, but I want the top 3 best ones.
Yeah.
So don't be stingy. Just give us away.
Number 1, be intentional in everything you say and do. Be intentional, because great intention leads to great opportunity. And then great opportunity leads to great success, but it starts with intention. So my first secret would be intentional in everything you say and do. Number 2, be consistent. If you're intentional and you're consistent, then you're going to set yourself up. And I would say this, Siddique, I'm going to do a 3 and a 3A. Okay. My third success secret is have a contrarian mindset. Don't do what everybody thinks you should do. Be resolute in your purpose and find out what it is that you want to do, and then be bullish and go in that direction. Because, only you can carve out what you want to do in your life. And everyone will tell you what they think you should do and what you shouldn't do and things like that. A contrarian mindset says when everybody goes here, I go here.
Yeah.
And I'm intentional about that. And so those things come together. And my 3A would be a person that cares. CARE.
Yeah.
Be consistent, be authentic, be relatable, and be encouraging.
This is great. So, Brian, we are about to wrap up. And I
thought we had 2 more hours, Siddique. I had plenty of material to give you 2 more. I know the constraints of time there, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you, Siddique.
Yeah, I know. Is there anything else you like to share which I didn't really get around to it?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned your book, New Success Secrets, and I'm anxious to pick that up. My new book, People Buy from People, the 10 powerful people lessons that I learned from the ultimate people person, my dad. So if you want to connect deeper, more powerful, more strongly, you're going to find that the first chapter in this book is people buy consistency. There's a reason that I talked about being consistent. And let me share this with you as well, too. In sales, in business, in leadership, people buy connection before they buy transaction.
Yeah.
People will buy connection. You have to connect first. If you're trying to sell something to someone, you must connect first before you ever sell them anything. And so this book talks about the 10 principles. They're consistency, thankfulness, empathy, meekness, observation, engagement, authenticity, uniqueness, motivation, and memories. And so People Buy from People, it's available on Amazon. You can get it there. It's available in paperback or Kindle. We're working on the audiobook now, so that should be uploaded by mid to late February. So we'll have the book in all 3 versions, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. So go to Amazon.com and search People Buy from People, Brian Sexton, and you can find the book there. And if you get the book and you like it and you get something from it, reach out to me, send me a note and say, hey, Brian, picked up your book. And I'm grateful. I don't have many. I have 2 copies left, and one of them is promised to a dear friend of mine. But hopefully we get some more copies and connect with your audience and get a copy to you as well, too, Siddique, so that we can share that. But yeah, that's what I'm working on now. The Intentional Encourager podcast. You can find it on all the podcast platforms. Reach out and connect with me. I'd love to engage and connect with those listening.
Wonderful. So you see that I have a Twitter ID for Brian Sexton 13. So what's the logic about 13?
Yeah, you asked me about that. So my birthday is August 13th. And then my son's birthday is September 13th. So our birthdays are a month apart. He wore the number 13 in high school. I wore 13 for a little while when I was playing baseball. And that's just kind of a special number to our family. So that's why Brian Sexton won 3.
Yeah, wonderful. So go ahead and send a tweet to DM. Follow him. I'm sure he is active. What's your ID on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn? Just kind of people can.
Well, no Instagram. I'm pushing 50, so no Instagram for me. I leave that to my soon to be 21-year-old son. No TikTok for me.
Okay.
You would not want me to see me do a dancing video. I promise you that. Facebook, you can search Brian Sexton or the Intentional Encourager podcast. Just make sure it pops up, the Intentional Encourager podcast. And then LinkedIn that's where I'm most active, is LinkedIn. It's Brian Sexton MBA, and you'll see the picture of People Buy From People, and you'll see my picture pop up there. Please connect with me. Let me know that you saw this conversation today on New Success Secrets in the Growth Hacking podcast. And Siddique, this has been great. I'm rambling because I could talk to you for such a long time. You've made it so easy and inviting to be a part of this conversation. I am most grateful. Thank you, sir.
And I'm grateful you are with us right now, the Brian Sexton. So, Brian, this is my question to you as a kind of review and testimonial for the show. And I like to ask this question to almost every guest. So, what would you say to your best friend about a Growth Hacking Secrets show when I'm not there?
Understand that growth is intentional, and understand that growth isn't going to happen overnight. A good friend of mine, Eric Conovalov, that I have to give credit for this. When I was writing my book, he told me, he said, B, he calls me B. He said, B, you're uncomfortable because you're in the growth zone, but you have to realize that there's no growth in the comfort zone. And so that's what I would say to my best friend is if you're uncomfortable now, it's because you're in the growth zone. But don't ever let yourself get into the comfort zone, because there's no growth there. And so it's intentional. Everything you say and do, be intentional, and intentionally grow, intentionally figure out what that growth looks like for you. It may not look like that for someone else, but that's okay. They don't have to live your life. You live your life. You be intentional about what growth looks like to you, and then just pursue it with everything you have in you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for the kind words. So what would you say as a final word?
Stay well and stay encouraged. That's how I greet people when I sign something. If somebody sends me a direct message, I just say 2 words: stay well. We're still in the midst of a global pandemic, and stay encouraged. I'll share this, Siddique, with you real quick. Encouraged people are powerful people. And encouragement starts by encouraging yourself first. You cannot encourage others until you're intentionally encouraged yourself.
Wonderful, wonderful. Stay well and stay positive and stay encouraged.
Stay well and stay encouraged, my friend.
Stay well and stay encouraged. Thank you so much, Brian Sexton, for sharing your wisdom with us today on the behalf of Growth Hacking Secrets community and our entire team. We really appreciate you. This is Muhammad Siddique signing off from Atlanta, Georgia. Until the next episode, all good wishes.